I'm writing this just after it happened. My boss, we nicknamed him Ross, allowed me to take a break for today as of how shocked and panicky I was. But I'm too shaky to even stand up, plus I don't feel safe walking home, so he offered to drive me home after work is finished. This entitled woman, who I assumed was the mom in the first post, comes walking back in. I was counter, so I saw her first and I didn't want to make a big scene as we were fully booked today and everyone would see and hear everything, so I was about to go into the kitchen to get Ross, who was helping cook with our chef. We have a different chef today and her nickname will be Lally. Entitled woman? You aren't leaving until we talk. This is already getting heads turning. I am not good with arguments if it is in a small group, let alone with a crowd of people watching. Me. I'm getting my manager. I will be a... The sentence was cut off with her yelling even more at me. Entitled woman. We don't need your manager here. You are an adult, so you can talk like one. Now keep in mind, I am barely an adult, and I easily get mistaken for being 18 or 19, and this woman was clearly twice my age. Me. I'm getting my manager. Just wait here. I'm trying to be calm and nice as possible, as many of the people here know me. They are locals in the area, and since they don't know the full situation, I don't want them to think I am being rude. Though looking back at it, they probably realized something was wrong at the start. She's yelling, and I can't be bothered to write it all down, and I can't remember all of it. But as I go into the kitchen, as I'm walking towards Ross, he yells, "Ross, what the F are you doing in my kitchen?" This shocks me as I assume he was talking to me until I feel someone grab my shoulder and pull me around. This lady, this entitled woman, has just walked into the kitchen and grabbed me. Entitled woman? I said you. She didn't have any time to speak. I pushed her off me. I'm not very strong, quite obviously weak, but I guess me being so scared and shocked gave me the strength to properly push her off me, and she almost fell over. What the hell? That is assault. You are going to be arrested. Ross. Lily, call the police, he says to Lily as he runs up to me, standing in between us. I was shaking a bit and I could hear some people outside talking quite loudly, guessing they heard what is happening. Entitled woman, when the police come here, they will see how awful you are to your customers, and that jerk will be rotten in prison. Ross, you are effing insane. She clearly didn't assault you. You scared the crap out of her, and you clearly have not many mental problems. This entitled woman gave me a death stare as I am shaken behind Ross. She tried stepping closer, but Ross started yelling at her again. Ross, don't get any closer to her. Entitled woman. She is a grown woman who can handle herself. If she wants to fight, we can fight. Ross, shut up. You know she doesn't want to fight. Plus, you are banned from here. Get out. He nudges my arm. I didn't get what he was trying to do, but she started to pick up the stuff on the side like the chips and started throwing them at me. Luckily, nothing near her was sharp, heavy, or just dangerous, but I was already panicking and this made it worse. They were both yelling at each other, and at this point I was crying and so scared I couldn't understand. I just remember at this point Lily coming in and walking me into the break room, which you need to unlock with a key, so we were able to lock her out. Now the police came over. I got questioned a bit. They heard me out and said what I did was fine and I had genuine reason to be scared. I asked Ross what happened, what they asked him, and he told me that it was basically the same questions I was asked, but he also showed the security footage. At this point, I'm not sure what is happening. I'm sitting by myself in the break room on a beanbag as I write this on my laptop. I think writing this all down did help, as I am no longer crying nor shaking as badly. I've noticed a giant red mark on my shoulder. This just feels so surreal as I read about these sort of stories, but happening to me makes it feel so much more scary than it is. Like reading through it, I feel as if I overreacted so much, but I know in the moment it felt like an even bigger deal than it really was. Edit 1. Someone was nice enough to tell me how to edit posts, so not much of an update as it is the same day still. But I just got driven home by Ross, and after reading all the comments, I will press charges if possible. I didn't want to originally, as I don't like confrontations. I also wanted this to end quickly as possible, but everyone was making such good points. I don't want her to do this to anyone else or treat anyone else like this. Before I forget to mention, I am not British. I do have an accent, and I'm obviously not fully white. My mother is half Greek, half French, and my father is from South Korea. I don't think this was hate crime related, but I think this is something worth mentioning. Edit 2. I could do much about what she did, but what I understand, she is most likely going to be fine. And when I was asking how much, they said most likely around 1,000 pounds, as it wasn't too severe. But we have to do this small court thing. Think they said it was small claims. But it seems like a lot of work just for something that won't go too far, so I don't think it is worth doing much. But they do have this encounter and the previous one on record in case she does something again to me, and then they said she might be able to get a bigger fine or even a few months in prison, as it will be treated more severely. So there I, 39N, was in a rural Shaw's. For those not in an area with a Shaw's, it's a standard supermarket with a club that makes things cheaper, which is their way of hiding their markup. Stuff is just cheaper a few miles down the road. Unfortunately, there were a few things I could only get there, like my flavor of lifeblood caffeine and food for the dogs. I was using my power chair, which back then I needed more often. It's an Eagle Had foldable deal, and it works great. I had been hit pretty hard by post-COVID and was very sedentary at that time in my life, along with a pre-existing joint problem. So I'm leaning forward to get a flat of Monster and stick it under my seat on the rack when a woman pushes on my back and says, "I need that." "You don't? You're younger." As I was belted in, nothing happened. It was only luck that I was belted in. Usually, I would have undone it to pick up something heavy. I sat up and pushed her hands off of me, saying, "What the F?" And she shakes the back of my chair like it's a dinner chair or something and goes, "You can use the scooter. The chair is better, and I'm old." And she points at the crappy supermarket scooter she's using. I stare at her in total shock for a moment and say, "This is my wheelchair. Get away from me." You can't use personal stuff in supermarkets. "Give me the chair." She started shaking it with each statement. So at that point, I just hit the maximum speed on my power chair and took off, ripping it out of her hands. It was either let go or be dragged on her face because she clearly wasn't super steady and needed a scooter herself. And we're off on the dumbest chase in creation, mostly because supermarket scooters go slower than any other mobility device. I buzzed over to the service desk and cut the line and said, "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. But there's a woman following me trying to push me out of my chair and take it." And from behind me, they can hear "Get back here" and the most wheezy buzz of the slow scooter. In the moment, it was really enraging that she was being so entitled and frustrating, and I just wanted to get my dog food and leave. But in memory, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. They let me into the little back office area, and they, and the whole line of people waiting, just sort of watched as she came over. And it took so long. The scooter was so slow, and she's yelling about how I don't need the chair and how she should get it because she's older and more disabled. It takes like a full 20 seconds for her to get from one end of the store to the other, and everyone is just staring as she rides full of glory at 0.1 miles per hour with her face red and her glasses hanging off one ear. So she finally gets to the desk, and they calmly explain that the wheelchair isn't store property, and if she tries to steal from another customer, they'll have to call the police. She starts shouting at the employees that she knows full well you can't bring personal equipment into the supermarket, so they're lying. And the other woman behind the counter says, with a bit more attitude, "Lady, why do you think we care if you bring a wheelchair into the supermarket?" At this point, I think something either clicked or she just realized that an entire line of people were staring at her, and not kindly. She suddenly asked where to find the artichokes. I almost coughed on my own spit. The worker just stared back and pointed back where the woman had come and said, "Produce," and the woman left. I admit that for the rest of my visit, I avoided any aisle she was in because I didn't want her close enough to grab me again. Now I can laugh about it for the absurdist comedy moment it was. In retrospect, I feel there's a reason here. Like her husband told her they shouldn't buy a thing like I had because they're not allowed to be in the supermarket. That's the best answer I can possibly come up with for that wild nonsense. Wherever you are, crazy lady, I hope you bought your own Eagle HD. So this happened during COVID in 2022 when all hospitals were not allowing any visitors. I worked in a rehabilitation hospital, and we were the only hospital in the valley that was allowing window visits. The patient will stay inside while the family friends would be outside, and they would communicate by being on the phone. It was just something we tried to do to help the patient have more support being in rehab. I was the main person of contact and the one who had to wheel the patient downstairs and back up, etc. Also, the person who gives a small orientation to the patients when they first arrived. To give a background of how window visit works, we did first come, first served, and it's 30-minute each session. We went by time slots, like I explained to the patients and family, preferably 2 days ahead, or if not, 1 day before 1 p.m. The schedulers are always working on the patient's therapy schedule for the next day, so they usually want any notifications about blocking out a certain time frame by 1 p.m. Patients are aware of needing 15 hours of therapy and 7-day grace period. So once the schedules are out, they try not to do any cancellation, if necessary. So far, I haven't had any issues with any family members or patients. They're pretty good about giving me a week notice for the time and day. This particular patient was admitted in the evening, so I went in the next day and gave the patient orientation and explained about the window visits. I reminded the patient about making sure to call me at least a day ahead if the family wants a window visits. The patient said they understood. The next day, the patient's son called my office wanting to make a window visit for the next day. I made the arrangements and explained to him about the rules again, and he said he understands. It was now 2 p.m., and I suddenly get a phone call from the receptionist. She tells me that a family member is here for window visits for that patient. Usually when I have window visits, I send out emails to all nurses in charge, therapy managers, schedulers, receptionists, etc., so they are informed too. I looked at my booklet and saw that there wasn't anything put down. I looked at the patient's schedule and saw that she was in a therapy session anyways. I told the receptionist I'll come downstairs to speak with the family member. I get downstairs, and it was a lady. I said hello to her, and she tells me she wants to see that patient for window visits. I apologized and informed her she wouldn't be able to see the patient. She has to call to make an apt ahead of time. This lady got mad and told me, "Are you guys a prison? You guys are treating my in-law like a prisoner." I told her, "We are not a prison, but there are protocols. Not every hospital is even offering this to families and friends, and that we are the only hospital doing this. Plus, it's to protect our patients, employees, and visitors." She huffs and kept calling us a prisoner and that this is unfair. I asked her, "Didn't the patient's son already called this morning to see the patient tomorrow?" She looks at me and rolls her eyes. "Well, I can't come tomorrow. That is why I'm here today." Apologized again and told her the patient is in therapy anyways, so she won't be able to see the patient. Plus, what if another patient's family is doing window visits right now or that we are booked for the day? I already explained the rules to the son too. The lady called us a prisoner one more time and said for me to just bring the clothes to the patient and left. I came to find out that the lady was the son who had called me this morning. Wife, I swear, some people are so entitled. I know everyone wants to see their family during this tough time, but what makes you so special compared to other people's family who are in rehabilitation also? This happened today. I have a German Shepherd who doesn't like strangers. I had a contractor at my house, so I had to put my dog outside. We have a fenced-in yard, but I had my dog on the tie-out because the contractor was sawing in the driveway and my dog can see him from the gate. I heard my dog barking, so I immediately went outside to put the kibosh on it. She was barking at this stranger, an unknown woman walking through the yard inches from my fence on my neighbor's side. This woman looked at me with disgust and yelled, "You need to bring that dog inside." I said, "What? Not that it's any of your business, but I have a contractor working, so I had to put her out here in my yard." She said, "You need to put that dog in the basement then." I said, "He's working down there too." She immediately said she's calling animal control. I yelled back, "Because she's barking at you." She said, "No, because it's cold and she's been out there for a half hour." My dog was out there for 15 minutes. It was 38 degrees with flurries. I wasn't even wearing a jacket and I wasn't cold at all. I yelled, "She's fine, and it hasn't even been a half hour. I don't know who you are, but you're walking through here and you need to mind your own business." She again said, "I'm calling animal control." I said, "Who do you think you are? You're trespassing." She said, "I know, neighbor's name, and I live over there, which is behind us on another street." So she's totally cutting through on my side. I said, "Guess I need to talk to neighbor about your cutting through." She started walking away and yelled she was calling animal control. At this point, the contractor who was in the driveway said, "What is going on? Who's that?" And I yelled some witch. She heard me. I couldn't believe the entitlement on this witch. I will be telling my neighbor the cutting through here ends now. Let her know, because if I see her do it again, I'm calling the cops. I also saw that she lives in the house that has a lot of loud butt parties with DJs. I'll be calling the cops every time. I never do crap like that in my open, deal with it even though it is annoying. All bets are off now. I'm going to be a pity witch. She messed with the wrong person.